Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review quite a few films that I'm going to try to get reviews done today. Still not feeling the greatest, so I apologize for my voice, but this first review is for Roman J. Israel Esquire. Now, when I saw the trailer for this and saw this was from Dan Gilroy, who made Nightcrawler, I was super excited because I'm a huge fan of that film, and when looking at this trailer, I'm like, this seems like it could be really interesting, but what is it necessarily about? And honestly, it's a pretty interesting story, but it's not fully realized in the best way that it could have been. And this film was a little disappointing, and it got mixed reviews, so going in, I wasn't expecting something fantastic, but I was still a little disappointed. Dan Gilroy, I think, does an okay job of balancing the story. It has a lot of moving parts and it can get confusing at times, but overall I think he does a fine job of keeping the film going. But the thing is, some of the pacing, it's a little slow and drags at moments. This film I don't think necessarily needed to be 2 hours, and it kind of doesn't have a whole lot of focus and energy directed towards driving this film to the end, so it kind of feels like you're kind of trudging along a little bit throughout some of this film, and that's really disappointing. From a tonal perspective, I feel like this film balances, like, it has its humorous moments, but for the most part it's a darker, edgier film, and Gilroy does a nice job of balancing that. And honestly though, you don't really super connect well with a lot of the characters in this film, so the emotional attachment really isn't there. And Roman is, in general, a good guy, and he doesn't sit on the same level as Jake Gyllenhaal's character from Nightcrawler, where it's like, are you really supposed to like him? Are you supposed to care about him? It's like he's a pretty bad guy. Roman just does some things that probably aren't for the best, and he might not know what's best, and he's a little awkward and eccentric, and I'll keep talking more about him as a character when I get to talking about the writing, but you don't feel super connected with him in this film. And then you have the cinematography done by Robert Elswit, who I talked about a couple weeks ago when I saw the film Suburbicon, and he does a nice job with the cinematography. It's a very well shot film. It has some cool shots. It has one particular interesting shot of somebody walking up the steps of a large building and the camera coming down, and you see it in the trailer and you're not quite sure who it is, and in the film you realize who it is. And overall the camera work's really well done. It gives a nice vibe to the film and atmosphere, and it gives it a little bit of character. Now, the writing was also done by Dan Gilroy. The story is a little convoluted, but it is an interesting story, and seeing where this man goes, and overall, honestly, really the only interesting person in this film is Roman, but you do get some interesting character development for Colin Farrell's character, but overall everyone else is kind of just there and going along for the ride with the rest of us, and necessarily not the most super interesting characters around along the way. And in terms of the dialogue, that's honestly one of the weakest points I think of this film, is so much of it's so heavy-handed and exposition heavy and overly philosophical that it's kind of like it's just trying to tell you everything that this film's trying to say, and it just feels really bogged down, and it's just like, why are you spelling all this out for me? It's like, I could pick up on some things, and there's a lot of heavy-handed philosophical conversations throughout the film, and it's just like, okay, I get it. It's like, I see where this character's coming from, I see where this character's coming from, but it's like, you don't have to spell it out for us. And I feel like that's one of the big weaknesses. And the way that it's presented, it hurts the themes of the story, because it's like, duh, to like bang you over with a hammer and talking about activism and doing the right thing for people or doing right by yourself, and it's just like, they overly talk about it so much that it kind of loses some of its muster in terms of its impact. Now, the music was composed by James Newton Howard, who I'm a huge fan of in his work, especially with M. Night Shyamalan. And the score in this film is nice. The thing is, it uses more popular music, like actual songs, throughout the film, and I think they're very, very well utilized in this film. And it gives it a very interesting, unique vibe to it. You get that sense of like, this is the kind of music that runs Roman's life because he's always listening to music. So us getting inside his head, listening to these songs and what's driving him, what's motivating him, I think is one of the more interesting things about this story. Now, the performances, Denzel Washington, I think, does a fantastic job. This is one of those roles where it's like an actor can really chew it up and really sink their teeth into something. And he makes all the overly heavy-handed dialogue actually work for him. And then, honestly, there's not many other notable people to talk about. There's Colin Farrell, and I think he does a nice job in his role, but he does get some moments, and honestly, he gets some moments to shine definitely towards the end of the film. And then you have Carmen Ejogo, who I think she did a really good job playing this woman who's obviously falling for Roman, but the thing is, she didn't really have much to do, and a lot of her dialogue was so obnoxiously, like, either bland or heavy-handed, and it's just like, she did her best with it, but I don't think it's something that's going to really stand out for her. My overall thoughts, my closing it factor for this film is, it's an interesting tale, and it's really driven by a powerful performance by Denzel Washington, but it's really bogged down by so much just like lathering things on top of you in terms of themes and messages that it's like I could have watched the PSA on you should do the right thing and could have done the same thing and it would have been 2 hours. But overall, I think the strong positives of this film do wind up outweighing the negatives of this film, and that's why I'm going to give Roman J. Israel Esquire a C+.